One of my supporters on Patreon, Dalton, requested that I make a video about how fandoms ruin things, and my brain immediately went to Rick and Morty. It's the franchise I know the most about that definitely has this culture surrounding it, or the idea that it ruined itself. And I was so prepared to talk about how Rick and Morty embarrassed itself to death, but when I did some digging, that didn't seem to be the whole story. So let's talk about the Szechuan sauce. So Rick and Morty, as of today's date, has 5 seasons. Viewership steadily climbed all the way to season 3, and then there was a sharp drop-off, and numbers have been declining since. In fact, season 4 had almost 1 million less people watching per episode than season 3 did. And sure, some people do come back and watch it at a later time, but viewers are quantifiably less excited to watch episodes as they come out. And that doesn't even cover the less quantifiable measures of success, persistence of fandom. Back in 2017, Rick and Morty was everywhere. People had t-shirts, people on the internet talked about it, people in real life talked about it, etc. But something happened. Something brought down the Rick and Morty behemoth. And I do think that it was the sauce, but it's not what you think. So first, a brief history of how we got here. On April 1st, 2017, Rick and Morty's 3rd season premiered with a surprise episode titled The Rick Shank Rickdemption, and in the episode, the Galactic Federation sends an agent to interrogate Rick using projections from his own memory. And in his memory, he goes to McDonald's, and specifically mentions that in 1998, I should just show you the clip.
In 1998, they had this promotion for the Disney film Mulan, where they created a new sauce for the McNuggets called Szechuan sauce, and it's delicious. And they got rid of it, and now it's gone.
So anyway, at the end of the episode, Rick goes on this, big, long, drunken rant, as he is wont to do, about how he's gonna get that sauce, no matter what it takes, 97 more seasons, etc. And the whole thing was a joke. It was just a bit. It was a callback reference to the pilot episode where he does a similar thing. Rick isn't actually obsessed with the sauce. It's a joke. And the sauce, spoiler alert, never gets mentioned for the rest of the season. So the Rick and Morty fandom collectively and individually decided, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we got our hands on some of this 1998 dipping sauce? Yes, it would be funny. So a petition was created on change.org for McDonald's to bring back the Szechuan dipping sauce. The petition reached 38,546 signatures. I nailed that number on the first try. Good job. A packet of the sauce sold on eBay for just under $15,000, and people were constantly tweeting at McDonald's corporate head chef to bring back the sauce. And McDonald's responded, surprisingly. Most incredible, I think, was McDonald's mailing Justin Roiland, one of the creators of Rick and Morty, a 64-ounce jug of sauce, of the Szechuan sauce. A couple of fans ended up receiving bottles of the sauce as well, one of whom put it on eBay, and deadmau5 bid on it. He ended up receiving it because the top bidders bailed on paying their $15,000 winning bid. And as I learned while writing this, he ended up sharing the sauce with fans at a concert.
Guys, this is about 15 grand of shitty Szechuan sauce right here. We got about 1,000 fucking nuggets for you guys, so you're fucking welcome.
Because he's just a swell dude. He's a real dude. So what I'm trying to say is that it was a really big deal. So the fans spoke, and McDonald's responded and decided to do a public release of the sauce as a promotion to go along with their new buttermilk crispy chicken tenders. So on October 7th, 2017, at participating locations, you could go get yourself some Szechuan sauce. So something important to note here, this happened on October 7th, and the 3rd season had just finished premiering on October 1st of the same year. And McDonald's famously underestimated just how much demand there was for this sauce. Every participating location across the country had lines out the door wrapped around the building. Some people waited overnight. One couple famously drove across the border from Canada into Syracuse, New York, only to be disappointed that that store did not receive its shipment of the sauce. According to McDonald's corporate, they only produced 4,000 packets of the sauce. And listen, I'm not good at math. I have not taken a math course in junior year of high school. But 4,000 divided by 200 participating locations across the country equals 20 packets of sauce per location. And for reference, according to the Wayback Machine, there was only one, in parentheses, one participating location in the entire Los Angeles area. Approximately 20 sauce packets for every Rick and Morty fan in the Los Angeles area. So in 2017, my friends and I were in college and we were bored, so we drove to Denton, Texas, which was the closest participating location, to try to go get our hands on some Szechuan sauce. When we arrived at this McDonald's, around noon-ish, there was already a line wrapped around the building, I think like twice, and I didn't get an exact head count or anything, but it was safely over 100 people. We hadn't even moved in the line when people started to come out of the McDonald's empty-handed. Someone who came out of the store told us that the employee had said they had received less than 30 packets of Szechuan sauce, and that math checks out. So in my experience, the fans were disappointed, but still had like fun with it nonetheless. It was kind of like a mini convention experience. People were dressed up in costume and, joking with each other, inside jokes, quoting the show, that kind of thing. There were no riots and chanting was kept to a minimum. And the line kind of just dissipated whenever we realized that we weren't getting any sauce. And honestly, we still had a good time in Denton. We went to, all these little stores and we were all dressed in, Rick and Morty costume, like a bunch of nerds. I had In-N-Out for the first time. Whataburger's better. My friends and I had a nice road trip, and it was about the journey, not the destination. You know how it is. But as we all now know, there were some real lunatics out there trying to get some of that sauce. I mean, we've all seen the videos of people rioting at McDonald's, right? We've all seen the videos of people rioting at McDonald's, right? So I went looking for videos of riots at McDonald's as a direct result of the sauce fiasco. There are no videos of riots at McDonald's as a direct result of the sauce fiasco. When you search Rick and Morty sauce riots on YouTube, the most that you will see is long lines, occasionally some people chanting, and maybe a couple of police cars. And look, anyone who has attended a school or worked at a school in the last 10 years will tell you that anytime there's a large crowd or even a hint of a threat, there's gonna be an officer there. It's so they can stop things quickly if a crowd gets out of hand, in theory. But crowds of people and chanting the words, "We want sauce," isn't a riot. It just isn't. The worst thing you can find is a couple videos of people reaching over the counter and stealing promotional posters. This one guy smashed a packet on the ground just to get a rise out of people. And this other guy who I'm sure we've all seen, and it's just cringe. It's just pure cringe. It's not even funny. It wasn't funny in 2017, and it's not funny now. So this guy is clearly mocking autistic people because sometimes your humor doesn't evolve past third grade. He's kind of become the face of the riots. And he did this as a bit, or excuse me, art, as he calls it.
A few days before, I was saying that all the Rick and Morty fans were freaking out over it. And I was telling my friends yo, I got it. This is the perfect opportunity to make some art.
In this cringy and unfortunate interview, he even admits that he likes Rick and Morty, even though the guy interviewing him makes multiple jabs saying Rick and Morty fans think they're so smart and they aren't.
Which is to be expected when a company has failed to properly cater to a fan base of autistic man-children who think of themselves as being highly intelligent.
It's a cringy mess. The whole thing is a cringy mess. I don't even want to tell you the title of the video because it's just so cringy and offensive and Jesus Christ. Someone else needs to make an entire video essay dissecting why this interview is so terrible and cringy and terrible. Anyway, so my point is, why does everybody seem to think that there were riots? Well, the biggest factor is the media and how the story spread. And I'm typically not one of the, like, you can't trust the media people, because my personality is exhausting in other ways. The media as a whole blew this way out of proportion. This includes social media. This tweet here says, "Angry crowd chants 'We want sauce' as police force them back." Everyone there had a smartphone. Every adult at the McDonald's that I went to had a smartphone. Unfortunately, just within the last year, we have seen a good example of a crowd being out of control, and people had their smartphones and were filming this crowd, those who were in it and those who were watching it. So in the thousands of photos and videos taken on that fateful October day, not one of them shows an angry crowd. People in lines vaguely pissed off about not getting their sauce? Sure. But an angry crowd? No. Most of these people are in a decent mood. Chanting, yeah, but again, they're chanting, "Make more sauce," and then the crowd dissipates and they leave. And if anyone seemed truly mad, it was definitely done as a joke, or ironically. Because in the episode, Rick wanted that sauce. And Rick's whole everything, his vice, is irony. Like, CJ just made a whole video about it. Go watch it. His whole monologue, again, is a callback to the pilot episode. Well, unfortunately, there's always a disconnect between the fandom and people not in the fandom. So people outside the fandom don't understand that 95% of this was done in jest. I mean, I even participated in a Szechuan sauce chant before they opened the doors at the McDonald's. And I wasn't mad. Nobody was mad. We were just excited about the sauce. And then the editorials started calling it a riot. And as has been proven time and time again, the American public cannot differentiate between an opinion piece and factual reporting. The video that a lot of editorials mention about rioting is actually just people crowding at a door to get a ticket to get into the McDonald's location, and it's not a riot. Even the title of this video has the word riot in question marks, like. And retrospectively, in the following months, when McDonald's came to release the sauce to every location, news outlets again referred to the incident as a riot, or there was rioting. And we all just accepted, including myself, that yes, there must have been riots. There were riots. That became our reality. And to be fair, you have to have a pretty high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty fans had already come under fire in internet circles for doxing female writers of the show, and some other unsavory behavior. So the fandom's reputation for being not cool, one could say, was already there. Dan Harmon himself was, for a while there, pretty vocal about hating his own fans. But truthfully, besides a few nasty individuals, what did the fans do to deserve the reckoning that they received? Gather in crowds because a corporation promised them promotional sauce? And hold on just a second. The promotional sauce in question was not explicitly a Rick and Morty tie-in, but this branding is clear as day. I mean, just look at this and tell me that it's not an homage, if not a direct ripoff of the Rick and Morty art style. Dan Harmon even tweeted this. "Yes, can I get a make blatantly unlicensed integration meal not done well? Hold the permission extra awkward." This tweet has since been deleted, and people were like mocking him in the replies for getting mad at McDonald's for selling their own product. And when you put it that way, it does seem silly, but this artwork and promotional material is clearly Rick and Morty inspired, and you know that not one person who works on the show received a penny from McDonald's for them blatantly ripping off their art style. Even in their response to the crowds and lack of supply to meet the demand, McDonald's tweeted a block of text that references Rick and Morty half a dozen times without ever explicitly saying the words Rick and Morty. But Dan Harmon also tweeted that He wasn't happy with how this was handled. He wouldn't wish this show's fans on anyone, and everyone got what they deserved. So everyone collectively accepted that there were riots at McDonald's. There's one more contributing factor that I'd like to talk about, and that is the sauce. In February 2018, McDonald's sponsored a 3-episode podcast made by Studio at Gizmodo and Onion Labs to cover their side of the story. It is a parody / homage to true crime / investigative journalism podcasts. The host interviews several people about the sauce debacle. Most of these people are McDonald's corporate employees, 2 of which are people who went to McDonald's to get the sauce on October 7th, one of whom received the original 64-ounce jug of sauce from McDonald's, and one of whom is deadmau5. It's a wild ride. It's also a really obvious piece of McDonald's corporate propaganda. I've seen neo-fascist recruitment posters with more subtlety than this. The first episode is titled Good Intentions and states repeatedly that McDonald's had nothing but good intentions in their wanting to bring the sauce back.
This podcast is all about what happens when the best of intentions go wrong.
The second episode is titled The Szechuan Sauce Riots, and it very clearly edits audio of people chanting, the guy jumping on the counter and yelling, and police sirens to make it seem like there were riots on that day. And there are no police sirens in any of the videos that I have found from that day, and I have been through at least 24 videos at this point. The third episode is titled Making Amends. One McDonald's corporate employee says that they didn't have time to manufacture more sauce, and it didn't matter how much sauce they made because it wouldn't have been enough.
If we had sat in that room and said, okay, we don't have enough sauce. Let's make 10 times the amount. Let's make 20. Let's make 50 times the amount. Let's make 100 times the amount that we're talking about. It still would not have been enough.
This is their way of saying, it wasn't our fault, but we're going to try to make up for the disappointment because we want to be the heroes. McDonald's had a self-imposed timeline on the sauce release. Like, they didn't even release it on the day that the last episode of season 3 premiered. They could have released it at any time. McDonald's also clearly saw how much the sauce was selling for on eBay. They clearly saw the tweets and the demand from fans to bring the sauce back. They could have easily looked up the ratings for Rick and Morty, which at the time was one of the most popular shows on television. But instead, they carelessly sent out less than 100 packets to the only participating location in a 100-mile radius of any major population center. Most interestingly, this podcast never says the words Rick and Morty. It only says the show.
TV show.
A TV show.
The show.
A certain show?
It never mentions the show by name. And that's really a detriment to this whole story, because if somebody didn't know what was going on and then they looked all this up on their own, and then they saw that this was Rick and Morty, it makes the fans look like a bunch of entitled babies. And some of them are. But in reality, it's Rick and Morty, and the show is wrapped in like 8 layers of irony. And as CJ so eloquently told us, it's also very genuine, but the sauce thing was all irony. And equally as telling, not a single employee who had to interact with customers that day was interviewed. No entry-level associates of McDonald's were interviewed. The worst we got were some angry tweets and Twitter DMs that were prefaced with the phrase, "Listeners beware, this language is intense."
Just as a warning to listeners, some of these messages are a little intense.
Where is my Szechuan sauce, you bald? Go drink bleach.
Ooh, a swear word. That's so scary. Also, there is this part at the end of the 3rd episode where the host, quote, tries some Szechuan sauce, and it is so obvious that she's not actually tearing open the thing and eating it. Like, it's laughable. It's really, really laughable. And I'm going to play it for you, but if you don't like the sound of people chewing or like ASMR type stuff, skip ahead to this time code.
I needed a taste of the sauce. So I tracked down a packet of it, and I have it here. It's the one from October. It says, used by 11/26/17 on it. But I'm willing to put my body on the line in the name of journalism. And I needed to experience the flavors that made an entire nation go absolutely insane. So, I've got some McDonald's fries, and I'm going to try Szechuan sauce right now. Here we go.
Honestly, this whole podcast is just like a huge mess, and I could sit here and dissect every second of it, and maybe I will in the future, but just know for now that it's a giant, giant corporate propaganda mess. I'm sure that we're all well aware of the story of the woman who sued McDonald's because her coffee was too hot. And I think a lot of people know now, thanks to Adam Ruins Everything, that McDonald's worked really hard to make sure that this elderly woman who suffered the third-degree burns was made to look like a fool because they sponsored a misinformation campaign against her.
Wow, how did I not know about this?
Because those corporate lawyers are really good at their jobs. They spent years running a disinformation campaign to convince Americans that there was an epidemic of frivolous lawsuits, and the media bought it.
So all I'm saying is that there's a reason McDonald's made a podcast with spliced together audio of chanting and police sirens instead of choosing a visual medium where there were no riots to show to tell their side of the story. But the podcast won a Webby Award and was on the top 100 podcasts of 2018, so what do I know? So yes, the Rick and Morty fandom has done some cringy things. This guy, this copy pasta, doxing female writers, etc. Again, Dan Harmon has condemned all of this behavior. So when it came time to point fingers, the fandom was a logical target. But is the fandom really to blame for the show's drop in popularity? Something brought down the Rick and Morty titan. Yes, it's still popular, but not as much as it once was. You don't see it absolutely everywhere anymore. People have moved on to fixate on and watch other shows. I would say that the 2-year hiatus between season 3 and 4 is responsible for the drop in viewership, but other shows have had similar breaks, and it only leads to more anticipation. Again, I was prepared to write a whole video on how the Rick and Morty fandom embarrassed itself into hiding, and I was so prepared to talk about how Rick and Morty embarrassed itself to death, and how the shameful actions of fans objectively brought down viewership as casual fans didn't want to associate themselves with people who rioted for sauce. And maybe that last part is true, but it doesn't really seem like that's the whole case. It seems like the fandom is being punished for being excited about a promotional release of a thing they asked for. The fandom is being punished for McDonald's lack of preparedness. And I'm not saying that the McDonald's corporate machine is exclusively responsible for Rick and Morty's decline in popularity, but it's certainly just as much to blame as the fandom is. If you like this video, like it, subscribe if you want, support me on Patreon if you really want. Special thanks to my patrons, Dalton, I Am the Teacup McAdoo, Josh Ferguson, Brian Barnes, Alexis Womack, and Paige. So Dalton, I'm sorry I didn't quite cover your topic exactly. It's hard to discuss objectively how fandoms ruin their own franchises without repeating things that other YouTubers have already said, but I hope this video was interesting enough anyway. I will see you guys in the next one, and thanks for watching.